Phase 1. The humiliating childhood at Gateshead Hall. The germination of resistance awareness. Jane was trapped in a miserable situation since childhood. Her parents died one after another from typhoid fever, and she was forced to live under someone else's roof and seek refuge with her uncle Mr. Reed family. This residence was inherently humble, and the sudden death of her uncle made Jane's situation worse. Her harsh and cold aunt, Mrs. Reed, always regarded her as a redundant burden and treated her extremely cruelly. Her cousin John Reed and cousins Eliza and Georgiana also inherited their mother's attitude, arbitrarily bullying and discriminating against Jane Eyre. In this environment full of indifference and violence, Jane Eyre did not submit passively as her aunt expected. Instead, the oppressive gross atmosphere made her awaken the awareness of resisting injustice at an early age. Once, John Reed flew into a rage because Jane Eyre read the family's books, not only roughly snatching the books and throwing them on the ground, but also punching her to the ground. Unable to bear it any longer, Jane Eyre rose up to resist bravely for the first time and confronted her cousin fiercely. However, this resistance brought even crueler punishment. On the pretext of resisting elders and being unruly, Mr. Reed forcibly locked Jane Eyre in the eerie and uninhabited Red Room, a place where her uncle lived before his death and eventually passed away. The dim light, cold furniture, and the shadow of death intertwined here, becoming an indelible traumatic symbol of Jane Eyre's childhood. During the hours of imprisonment in the Red Room, Jane Eyre not only endured the extreme fear brought by the environment, but also deeply felt the humiliation and despair of being rejected by her relatives and treated unfairly. She shed tears silently in the dark, but her determination to escape from Gateshead Hall became stronger and stronger. This place was never home, but a cage that devoured her dignity. Fortunately, Bessie, the kind governess at home, always felt sympathy for Jane Eyre. She saw and felt sorry for her, and secretly kept an eye out for opportunities for Jane Eyre to leave. Finally, with Bessie's mediation and help, Mrs. Reed finally agreed to send away this thorn in her side, and Jane Eyre was officially sent to Lowood Charity School. This seemingly cold decision actually opened a new stage of her life. The core conflict of this phase is essentially the oppression and confrontation between an orphan girl with no one to rely on and a powerful family. Although Jane Eyre's first resistance failed to completely change her situation, it sowed the seeds of pursuing equality and freedom, laying a key foreshadowing for her subsequent life choices. Phase 2. Tempering at Lowood School. The shaping of an independent personality. Lowood Charity School was not the place of redemption Jane Eyre imagined, but a boarding school controlled by the church with extremely harsh conditions and discipline bordering on cruelty. Mr. Brocklehurst, the principal, was a typical hypocrite. He superficially advocated asceticism and humility and obedience, but in fact he was selfish and corrupt, embezzling the school funds for his own use. Under the pretext of cultivating virtue, he made the students live a life of hunger and lack of clothing. Jane spent 8 years in this school, and the first few years were extremely tormenting. The daily food was only unpalatable porridge and hot bread. In winter, there was a lack of adequate heating equipment, and the students could only shiver in the cold wind wearing thin and tattered clothes. They also had to endure Mr. Brocklehurst's spiritual oppression and unfounded accusations. Even in such a gloomy environment, Jane was lucky to meet two important mentors and friends in her life. Miss Temple, the kind and gentle superintendent of the school, not only taught Jane knowledge, but also taught her what dignity and tolerance was through her words and deeds, and firmly cleared her name when Jane Eyre was wronged. Helen Burns, her peer friend, had calmness and open-mindedness beyond her age. She faced injustice with an attitude of returning good for evil and endured hardships with strong will. This calmness deeply influenced Jane Eyre's character, making her learn to maintain inner peace in adversity. Fate's cruelty did not spare the kind Helen. A sudden typhus epidemic swept through Lowood School, and the weak Helen fell ill unfortunately. In Helen's last moments of life, Jane slipped to her hospital bed secretly despite the risk of infection. The two hugged tightly, and Helen passed away peacefully in Jane Eyre's arms. The death of her close friend brought great grief for Jane, but it also made her understand the significance of cherishing life and pursuing freedom more deeply. Later, because of conflicts with Mr. Brocklehurst's single quotes as ideas, and seeing through the hypocritical nature of the school, Miss Temple chose to leave lower. Miss Temple's departure made Jane Eyre suddenly realize that this school, which had once allowed her to grow, had now become a cage restricting her development and could not let her realize her true self-worth. Therefore, after working as a teacher at Lowood for 2 years, the adult Jane Eyre took the initiative to resign. She was unwilling to be content with the status quo and longed to find a new world where she could stand independently and breathe freely. By posting a job advertisement in the newspaper, Jane Eyre successfully applied to be a governess at Thornfield Hall. This step was not only a career change, but also a key link for her to take the initiative to pursue an independent life. The core of this phase is tempering and growth in adversity. In the harsh environment, Jane Eyre not only accumulated knowledge and abilities, but also developed a persistent, self-disciplined, self-respecting, and self-loving personality that persisted in pursuing equality under the influence of her mentors and friends.
Phase 3, Love and Secrets at Thornfield, the collision of equal souls. Thornfield Hall, the ancient mansion located on the edge of the moor, became the most crucial turning point in Jane Eyre's life. Her job here was to be the governess of Adele, the adopted daughter of Mr. Rochester, the owner of the manor. Adele was the daughter of Rochester and a French dancer in his early years, and later entrusted to Rochester's upbringing. Mr. Rochester, the owner of the manor, had a complex personality. He traveled abroad all year round, was gloomy and withdrawn, and acted mysteriously. He often returned to the manor with a tired and distant feeling. But what was different was that Rochester did not look down on Jane Eyre because of her humble status as a governess. Instead, he was attracted by her unyielding temperament, intelligent and sharp thinking, and sincere and straightforward character. In daily life, Rochester often took the initiative to chat with Jane Eyre, discussing life, literature, and ideals with her. This equal communication made Jane Eyre feel long-lost respect and warmth, and in her interactions with Rochester, Jane Eyre gradually saw through the loneliness and deep affection under his cold appearance, and slowly fell in love with this seemingly eccentric but passionate man. The feelings between the two continued to heat up through repeated temptations, disputes, and sincere exchanges. Jane Eyre experienced the sweetness of love for the first time, but she also felt anxious because of the huge class gap between them.
On a moonlit independent personality. St. John Rivers was a devout clergyman who regarded religious beliefs as the whole of his life. His life goal was to go to distant India to spread Christian doctrine and save lost souls. In his interactions with Jane Eyre, he admired her perseverance, hardworking and down-to-earth character, and strong abilities, believing that she was the ideal partner for his missionary work. A helper who could fight side by side with him and dedicate herself selflessly. Therefore, St. John proposed to Jane Eyre, but his proposal had no warmth of love at all. purely out of the need of religious mission. He hoped that Jane Eyre would accompany him to India as his wife and dedicate her whole life to the missionary cause. Faced with this proposal, Jane Eyre fell into deep thought. Although this was a stable life choice regarded as noble, it was not the life she truly desired. St. John's love was full of moral kidnapping and spiritual oppression. He constantly persuaded Jane Eyre with God's call and sacred mission, trying to make her give up her personal emotional needs and obey the so-called sacred arrangement. In the process of repeated thinking and refusal, Jane Eyre became more and more clearly aware that what she wanted was not sacrificial dedication, but sincere love based on equality and respect. At the same time, her longing for Rochester in her heart became stronger and stronger, as if she heard the call of her lover from afar. Finally, Jane Eyre resolutely refused St. John's proposal, decided to follow her heart, return to Thornfield Hall, and find her own true happiness. The core of this phase is self-redemption and spiritual awakening. Jane Eyre not only achieved economic independence, but also completed the sublimation of her spiritual level through thinking about life choices, clarifying her life pursuit. Phase 5, Reunion and Completeness, the destination of equal love with firm determination. Jane Eyre embarked on the journey back to Thornfield. However, when she arrived at her destination, she was deeply grieved by the sight before her. The once magnificent Thornfield Hall had been reduced to ruins in a sudden fire. Upon inquiry, she learned that the fire was set by Bertha Mason. After setting the fire, she climbed to the roof and finally jumped off to commit suicide. Rochester, to save the trapped servants, rushed into the fire regardless of his personal safety. Although he successfully rescued the servants, he was unfortunately injured by falling beams, losing his eyesight and breaking one arm. Completely disabled, the former noble gentleman became destitute and had to move to Ferndean Manor in the suburbs to recuperate. This tragic disaster destroyed Thornfield, but it also accidentally removed the class and moral shackles between Jane Eyre and Rochester. Rochester lost the aura of wealth and status, while Jane Eyre had the confidence of economic independence and personality independence. Finally, the two could face each other with completely equal souls. When Jane Eyre found Ferndean Manor and saw the haggard and blind Rochester, the love and distress in her heart surged instantly. Instead of leaving because of Rochester's disability and poverty, she took the initiative to walk to him, held his hands tightly, frankly expressed her feelings, and firmly chose to stay with him for the rest of her life. In the end, Jane Eyre and Rochester held a simple but warm wedding at Ferndean Manor, without luxurious arrangements, only two equally loving hearts. After the marriage, Jane Eyre warmed Rochester's injured body and mind with her love and companionship. She read books for him and walked with him, becoming the brightest light in his dark world. Under Jane Eyre's influence, Rochester gradually shed his former gloom and arrogance, becoming gentle and humble, and learned to truly respect and cherish others. At the same time, Jane Eyre did not monopolize the inheritance left by her uncle, but divided it equally among her three cousins, St. John, Mary, and Diana. Helping them realize their life ideals, Mary and Diana became teachers, and St. John went to India as a missionary as scheduled. At the end of the story, under Jane Eyre's careful care, one of Rochester's eyes gradually recovered his sight, enabling him to vaguely see Jane Eyre and their children. The two gained true and complete happiness in a plain and warm life. The true meaning of this happiness has nothing to do with the matching of class and wealth, but lies in the equal harmony and mutual nourishment of two independent souls. This is the ultimate victory of personality independence and spiritual equality that Jane Eyre pursued all her life.